Hi friends, Gina Johnsen from the 78th House District here in Michigan. I want to talk to you a little bit about a topic that came alive in 2020, and it's vaccine freedom. Now, prior to this, we had all sorts of true bullying by local health departments against parents whenever they tried to fill out a waiver at a high school or elementary school or wherever they were, and they'd go to the desk and they'd say, "Hey, can I get the waiver for my child so I can let you know I, the parent, am stating that they're not going to have the regular vaccine schedule." Whether there's a delayed, some vaccines now, some later, or not at all, or we're doing all but one, or whatever. And it really is the parent's right, medical right, a civil right, every kind of right, natural right, to take care of your own children and decide what you think is best for them. And so prior to 2020, when we got really talking about vaccinations, it was already a problem in Michigan. And local health departments suddenly had the authority to call the parents in when the schools said, "Oh, this parent doesn't want to, have regular vaccine schedule." They would have to partner with the health department, wait for an appointment, have the health department call them in and say, "Okay, you're going to sit down either by yourself," or sometimes they make them bring their children with them and sit through a talk that went something like this. You realize you're not a good parent. You realize this is putting your children and everyone else in the world in jeopardy. You realize this is against all of our recommendations, and you're still going to sign this piece of paper? Okay, then sign it. By the way, you need to watch a video first about all the risks of not being vaccinated, and sign the paper. We'll sign off. Now you have your waiver to send your kids to public school. When I had my child in school, if we had a waiver, I went up to the desk, they gave me the waiver, I signed it, it was done. It literally took 30 seconds. And if you look at statistics, the parents that choose to not vaccinate prior to 2020, the parents who have chosen to not vaccinate the full schedule, a delayed schedule, a partial schedule, or not at all, when you look at their education status, they're highly educated. They're not stupid. They're not ignorant. They're well read. Now, I'm not saying that makes them right, but they obviously know what they're doing. Now, that's just a statistic. It doesn't have to be that way. That is a statistic nationally. Additionally, when I grew up, and I'm 57, when I grew up, there were probably 5 vaccines, 3 to 5 vaccines. There are over 70 now. So for folks to consider a delayed schedule, a different schedule, a partial schedule, or not at all, is with good reason. We are the only nation in the whole world that has this many vaccinations. And it is showing itself to be detrimental to our health, at least a high risk category. Now, given all the vaccines that we've seen up until 2020, they had to show studies that show side effects, adverse events, safety, and efficacy. They had to. Suddenly 2020 comes, suddenly we have a novel virus, and at warp speed, we put through vaccines, unvetted, no safety data, have no data. We've never had them in an experiment before. We became the experiment. No adverse event profile, no side effect profile, nothing to share about. Just take it. We're sure it's going to prevent the virus, which it didn't, and we all know that now. Oh, you got a milder form. That's bunk. A milder form by whose standards? Is that a scientific statement? A milder form? This is a bunch of ridiculous talk. I've been in the science world, I've been in the medical world long enough to know that doesn't sound very scientific, and people laugh about it. So all that considered, House Bills 4552 and 4553 were introduced recently I've co-sponsored them, and you're going to hear more about them as they are passed in the House. These give us freedom, civil rights added to our Civil Rights Act to include you have choices about taking care of your body. You have choices about what you put in your mouth and what you inject into yourself, what you engage in medically. It's your choice. And it's certainly your choice on what you engage your children in. Now, just for an example, you think about a family where the oldest child takes a vaccine, birth, 2 years old, 5 years old, whatever, and they can see the evidence of the injury. They certainly know that the rest of their kids are in the same gene pool. They don't want to risk everybody having the same reactions. They learn from the one, which is still all very harsh and difficult to handle. They learn from the one, they don't want to do the rest. They shouldn't be bullied. Nobody should be bullied. You've also heard the term, my body, my choice. Now, if we're going to espouse my body, my choice on all things. What I eat, what I drink, what I engage in, as long as I'm not hurting somebody else. And what I choose to vaccinate or take medically is my choice, it's your choice. We're fighting for those freedoms, that you would retain those freedoms. And we're not going to have a bully health department anymore crack down on good parents that are just considering all risks. Thank you so much for listening. There's more ahead.